So, God can use me anytime and anywhere. What a wonderful prayer that really is. I want to live so. In other words, I want to live in such a way that God can use me. I want you to think about that, because some of y'all have been discarded and folks said you couldn't be used. Some folks think that they are not worthy to be used. But the song said, I want to live so God can use me anytime and anyway. I want to attract your attention this morning to the book of Judges once again as we forge ahead in this character study of one of the most enigmatic, mysterious figures of all of the Old Testament, our brother Samson. I invite you to read along with me in Judges 14, verses 1 through 10. Judges 14, 1 through 10. Find your place on your feet, if you would, for the reading of the word as we consider our sermonic section for today. Judges chapter 14, verses 1 through 10. I'll read aloud as you can follow along on the screens. Once Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw a Philistine woman. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw a Philistine woman at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, Is there not a woman among your kin or among all your people that you must go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me because she pleases me. His father and mother did not know that this was from the Lord, for he was seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah. When he came to the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion roared at him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he tore the lion apart barehanded, as one might tear apart a kid. But he did not tell his mother or father what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson. After a while, he returned to marry her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the carcass of the lion. His father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, as the young men are accustomed to do. Thus ends the reading of the word. Amen. You may be seated. I want to talk just for a little while from the subject when charisma is under crisis. When charisma is under crisis. Beloved, if we take the scriptures seriously, and we should take the scriptures seriously, 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 3 suggests to us when it says his divine power has given us everything needed for life. We have been gifted from God with everything that we need for life. You already have it. You got everything you need to satisfy your destiny. You have everything that you need to fulfill God's plan in your life. You already have been given, bequeathed, been gifted the raw materials for destiny. You already have it, which means then, beloved, that all of us are charismatic personalities. Every one of us are charismatic people. You might look at yourself and raise an objection by saying, I'm not very charismatic at all, Pastor. I don't have a magnetic personality that draws people unto me. In fact, I'm rather introverted rather than extroverted. I don't have that it factor that would suggest greatness has been heaved upon my life. I don't have what the French would call that je ne sais quoi, that indescribable trait or attribute that gives me the edge in life. I'm not one that likes public speaking. In fact, I'd much rather play a secondary role than a leadership role. I don't have all of the accoutrements of personality and leadership. I'm not charismatic at all. In fact, I'm just a whole humdrum, average Joe kind of person. Beloved, I would submit to you that you have belittled the gift of God on your life. For all of us are charismatic individuals as the people of God. For charisma, rightfully understood, really just means gift. Charisma has its origins in the Greek word charis, which simply means grace. Every child of God has been given a gift of grace from God. Every one of you sitting here, every one of you watching has a gift from God. Somebody ought to celebrate that, because you've been told that you're just like your daddy and you'll never amount to anything. Some of you have been pushed to the periphery of life because of gender or race or orientation. Some of you have been denied the latitude of the gift because somebody told you somewhere you don't measure up and fit the standard of giftedness. But every child of God has a gift. Your gift may not be my gift, and my gift may not be yours, but I guarantee you, if you are above ground, you've got a gift that comes from God, and only you can do what you do. Other folks may sing in the choir, but only you can do what you do. There may be a plethora of preachers, but nobody can hoop like you can hoop. There may be a multitude of musicians, but nobody can interpret the song the way you do. There may be a plethora of executives, but nobody can manage with affluence and impact the staff the way you do. There may be a lot of communicators, but nobody can turn a phrase like you do. That's because every child of God is uniquely, charismatically gifted. You got a gift, and you got to use it. There's something about the gift of God on your life that compels you, that ought to compel you to use it anytime and anywhere. But I submit to you, beloved, that there are some times when charisma falls under crisis. And that's what we find operating in our text today and in the larger narrative framework of this tragic hero named Samson. Charisma has fallen under crisis. The text for today says that on the heels of what we talked about last week, Samson is a judge of all of Israel. He is the one that has been appointed and anointed, equipped to execute God's plan of redemption and rescue for Israel. He is legendary in his strength. His feats are historical. People, when they see Samson walking down the street, say, "There goes a man." Yet, beloved, Samson, as we see in this passage, is terminally flawed. Samson here violates just about every principle of Jewish ethical codes of conduct. First thing that it says of Samson is he desires to marry a woman outside of his culture. And for the Jews, that was considered one of the greatest of taboos. He then, beloved, as a Nazirite, not supposed to touch anything dead, scrapes out honey from the carcass of a dead lion. And then, to make matters worse, as if they could get any worse, he then makes a fool of himself. Excuse me. Makes a fool of himself by throwing a party, as young men are accustomed to doing. He who should not touch wine or whiskey is behaving like boys will be boys. He violates every ethical standard, every moral code of conduct, because he simply is an undisciplined hero. And beloved, whenever our gifts are undisciplined, that is charisma under crisis. And you see, beloved, that is a crisis of epic proportion when we fail to surrender what God has given us back to God so that it can be managed and used to its maximum impact and effect. For the lack of discipline is something that will surely compromise our integrity and effectiveness, to the point that we can't do all that God wants us to do. You do realize that when you're undisciplined, that the Lord's plan is in some way compromised. Crisis in charisma. The vessel that is to be used cannot be used effectively, fully, and totally because it lacks focus. And discipline, beloved, allows us to channel our enthusiasm. Here, Samson has a passion for his people and for executing the will of God, but he does it in such a jacked up way. He wants to marry outside of his own community. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not some antithetical tirade against interracial unions. What I'm pointing out here is that Samson has an enthusiasm, but it's channeled in a corruptive and corrosive way. And beloved, if we can ever learn to discipline our gifts, it'll channel our enthusiasm in a way that is whole and wholesome and brings blessing rather than burden. Discipline channels enthusiasm, and discipline creates boundaries. The one who should remain pure and untouched by the despoiling carcass of a dead animal is the one who touches it and not only eats from it, but discipline establishes boundaries in life. And Lord knows all of us need some boundaries. None of us need to have total freedom, because that'll sure enough get us in some trouble. We all need some boundaries in every aspect of life. We need to learn to curb the tongue. We need to learn to push away from the table. We need to learn not to carry the grudges and to be a little more empathetic to others who may offend us. We all need some boundaries which cannot be crossed lest we lose our identities and come away with a distorted sense of self. Boundaries create for us the discipline necessary for us to operate again in wholeness and in fullness. And then, beloved, discipline creates concern. Here in the text, Samson does what many of us consider to be a despicable and detestable deed. He scrapes out honey from a dead carcass. And it would be one thing if he ate it just for himself. But this joker has the audacity to give it to his mama and his daddy. Come on now. Most of us respect our parents enough to keep them from our foolishness. Our foolishness may spill over into our lives, but most of us try to keep them out of our stuff, out of respect. Come on, you remember the first time you cussed in front of your parents? How uncomfortable it felt. And even your mama may have taken a bar of soap to wash out your mouth. But we did not do that because of a sense of respect and concern for others. Samson has lost all disregard for other people. He's so singularly focused on himself that he forgets that while he can despoil himself, he can also tragically impact others. Discipline creates for us a sense of concern for somebody else. Paul put it this way: if my brother or my sister is offended by my eating meat, then I won't eat any longer any meat. It's not that the eating of meat is corruptive or corrosive to me, but if it bothers you, then I'm going to refrain. Discipline creates concern for others. And one of the principal hallmarks and characteristics of an undisciplined life is that it lives only for itself. It's got an I problem. I want, I need, I desire, I am this and I am that and I have succeeded. But discipline says I've got to be concerned about how my life is impacting that of another. Here, this charismatic giant, colossal of a man is so undisciplined that his gift is in crisis. He can kill lions barehanded, but is the Lord pleased? He can create riddles which baffle the crowds, but is the Lord pleased? And that becomes the question for us. Is the Lord pleased with the way we use our gifts? Is the Lord happy with the way you think? Is the Lord happy with what you touch and how you touch it? Is the Lord pleased with your outlook on life? Discipline is needed because, beloved, charisma without control, without any fetters, is a train wreck waiting to happen. You've seen it. Some of the most gifted and talented people who have no moral compass, who could do so much good, who could change so many lives, often are so self-absorbed that they go down in flames without having touched another's life in a positive way. Discipline is needed lest charisma fall under crisis. Well, I know that the natural response to this moment is, Pastor, how then do I develop discipline? Because Lord knows I've tried. I've tried to quit cussing. I've tried to lose weight. I've tried to treat my neighbor a little better at work. I've tried. Lord knows I've tried, but I haven't yet been successful. How does one develop discipline to the point that one can become more effective and live the fullest life possible as God has already given us that which we need for life? Well, the first thing that I would submit to you, that if we're going to develop discipline, we've got to have a consciousness of the Creator. You got to have your mind set on the Lord, because it is the Lord and only the Lord that can help you in moments of crisis. The consciousness of the Creator is a recognition of one's personal limitations. In other words, people who cannot acknowledge that I need help are the ones who often fall off the cliff first. But a consciousness of the Creator says, Lord, I need you right now. Discipline is a matter of recognizing that I can't do what you've called me to do by myself, but I need you, and I need you right now. I need you to hold my tongue. I need you to give me a little more patience. I need you to help me not worry. So I need you to help me not consign people to the dustbin of history, but to continue to see possibility with them. I need you. Got to be in disciplined lifestyles, conscious of the Creator. Second thing here that I would submit to you is that you got to be conscious of your craft. The gift that comes from God is to be a blessing to somebody else. You got to be conscious of your craft. And in being conscious of your craft, you recognize and understand that my gift doesn't come from me, but God's effectiveness comes through me. You didn't get that. It doesn't come from me, but it comes through me. In other words, I'm just a vessel of the Lord. I'm a conduit that God can use to pour into me to flow to somebody else. Recently in our home, we had a problem in one of the tubs. The water was backing up and it didn't flow correctly. It wouldn't move fast enough. And so as the water would fill up in the tub, it would leave a ring, a residue of the dirt, and it would be a reminder of that there was a problem in the plumbing. Well, my wife stuck, as most of us will do, a coat hanger into the pipes and brought up something that should not have been there. But once it was removed, the water began to flow freely. Y'all ain't feeling me because somebody ought to shout right there. If you can learn to get rid of to unclog your spiritual pipes, God's power can flow through you. God's blessings can flow through you. God's purpose can flow through you. What's clogging up your pipes? Got to be conscious of the Creator. I've got to be conscious of the craft, and if I want to be disciplined, I've got to be focused on the future. What Samson lacked was a consciousness that kept him focused on his future. His job is to be the champion of Israel against the Philistines. Samson forgot about the focus on the future. And I would submit to you that if you can keep a focus on the future, it will develop into a sense of discipline. For when you're focused on the future, you recognize I have a job to do. I got something that the Lord requires of me. There's a song that has to be sung, a sermon that has to be preached, a life that has to be touched, a soul that has to be saved, a child that has to be encouraged, a community that has to be uplifted, a hungry belly that has to be filled, a discouraged individual that needs uplifting. I've got a job to do, and I can't do my job if I'm distracted with everything else. I got a job to do. Samson forgot he had a job to do. He allowed the distraction of the ladies to capture his imagination and attention. But discipline, beloved, evolves out of a focused future and an understanding of purpose, power, and passion. I've got something that the Lord requires of me to do. And it engages all of my energies, even to the point that death is no longer a distraction. No wonder the ancestors used to say, I keep so busy praising my Jesus that I ain't got time to die. I keep so busy working for the kingdom that I ain't got time to die. I keep so busy because I'm focused on the future that God has placed deep in my heart, embedded in my purpose. Discipline is required. But because Samson was an undisciplined, tragic hero, the Bible says that he went down to Timnah, threw a party. Wine was flowing freely. Whiskey was there for easy consumption. And the text says this is just what young men do. Boys will be boys. He followed and continued what seemed to be an unbroken line of toxic masculinity, of habits that had been unchecked. But I'm glad, beloved, there was another young man who came and broke the mold. A young 33-year-old Palestinian who had a sense of divine consciousness, who had discipline woven into the tapestry of his ministry. I'm glad that there was another young man who said, boys don't have to be boys, but there's another way of existence. I am coming not to serve, not to be served, but to serve. I'm coming not to be glorified, but to help somebody else come up in the world. I'm coming not because I want everybody to know my name, but I want somebody else's name to shine above my name. I'm coming. And so he came through 42 generations. He came. Praise God, he came. Aren't you glad he came? He came in your life one day. Aren't you glad Jesus came? And aren't you glad that he still breaks every chain, breaks every normative pattern, breaks every pattern of previous existence? Aren't you glad he still comes in the midnight hour when you need him? Aren't you glad he still comes to the bedside when the doctors give up on you? Aren't you glad he still comes when everybody else leaves you alone? Aren't you glad he still comes when nobody else wants anything to do with you? Aren't you glad he still comes? I don't know about you, but I'm glad, so glad that he meets me just when I need him most. He comes because he comes to break the patterns of life so that new ways of principled living can emerge. He comes. He comes in unexpected ways. He comes riding on the storms of life. He comes in the myriad mistakes of our existence. He comes when no others have said he would come. Praise be to God. Jesus shows up just when I need him the most. If there's one today who has a sense of your charisma, that you are a unique personality, a figure that is unparalleled, a personality that has no equal because of your own uniqueness, then we invite you to come and turn over your gift to the Lord. For it was the Lord who gave it to you. It will be the Lord who flows through you to become the greatest possible person that you can be. For our greatest strengths, having never been surrendered to God, will always become our fatal flaws. Samson is a strong man, but he's a weak man. Passionate, but often played. Decisive, but bullheaded. If only he had given his strength to God and not just used it for himself, how might the world be different? Same applies to you, beloved. How might the world be different if you would only give what you have back to God? And I am here to assure you that whatever you surrender to the Lord will in no ways be lost. For God has a strange way of taking what you give him, working on it, giving it back to you. And when God gives it back to you, it's blessed and multiplied. You remember there was a little boy that had just a Happy Meal few fish and few loaves of bread. He gave it to Jesus, and what happened? A smorgasbord, a buffet emerged out of a lad lunch. What do you want to give to the Lord today? This is your moment to give your greatest gift, your life, which is God's greatest gift to you. If you can give it to God, God will give it back with purposeful meaning. This is your moment. This is your time. This is your opportunity to surrender what you have unto the Lord. For those who are watching online, you have the same privilege in this moment. There's a number at the bottom of the screen. Take advantage of that in this hour so that you can say to the Lord, I surrender my all, myself. I give myself away. Here is the moment. If there are those in the sanctuary, just step out of the aisle, step out of the pew, walk down the aisle. And these deacons will be glad to facilitate a new way of being in your life. For those of you who are online who wish to have your prayers acknowledged, we encourage you to put them in the chat right now, and in the moment ensuing, we will pray for them. But right now, this is the hour of decision. Whomsoever will, let him or her come.
Yes, sir. Come on, let's say it together. I give myself away. I give myself away so you can use. I give myself away. I give myself